Welcome to WrestleWolf. This is AEW Weekly. I am Dr. Damian Gibson, and joining me, as always, is the man who only deals in kayfabe. It's Matthew Kayfabe.
It is a week where you would rather be dealing in kayfabe, I think.
Yeah.
You know, the reality is Brodie Lee didn't die. John Huber did. And, you know, unfortunately, I think modern wrestling can't exist without kayfabe being, you know, essentially kayfabe is part of a storyline now. Like, you know, everyone knows that you know, when Triple H punches Randy Orton, it's not a real punch. But occasionally you like see Mick Foley fall off a cell and you go, oh shit, you know, the other stuff's not real, but like that's real. Or, you know, WWE hears Daniel Bryan getting cheered for seeming to be an underdog, and so they intentionally keep him off a pay-per-view to, you know, foment that kind of that kind of thing. You know, create the idea that they think he can't be a star, so that then therefore he can become a big star. And then, you know, you have a guy like Brodie Lee who, you know, part of his character was sort of breaking kayfabe, in so much as I think part of the either bit you enjoyed or bit you didn't enjoy was that he was doing a lot of references to Vince McMahon. And then, you know, there was also the element of the fact that this is a guy who left WWE despite the fact that they were, you know, handing out huge contracts at that point to literally anyone, no matter where they were on their card, you know, because he thought he could do better elsewhere. And so there was sort of a meta kayfabe element that, you know, everything he did was sort of seen through the lens of us as the fan wanting to see him succeed. And, you know, I think that's one of the great things about AEW is that it's these indie guys who were maybe too small or looked too weird or whatever, and you know, probably wouldn't be WWE champions, although some of them maybe they would be. And you know, part of the reason we all connect, I think you and I, you know, connect to, and potentially the brother friends connect to indie wrestling and AEW, which is obviously not indie wrestling, but is sort of the most sanitized version of it. Is that, you know, these are people that are willing to wrestle in front of, you know, 50 people in a bingo hall for no money. You know, they're fans. It's not, we talk about on the WCW podcast, you know, these guys that were, you know, we were joking the other week about how all these people's, you know, previous jobs were bouncers. You know, like this is the previous generation was sort of failed athletes, you know, like The Rock or Kevin Nash or Goldberg or you know, bouncers like the Road Warriors or Scott Hall or whoever else.
Yeah.
And this is sort of this generation of fans. And like you watch Brodie Lee and you could sort of tell he was a fan and he actually enjoyed wrestling. And, you know, I think to bring it around, realizing that I've sort of dominated the talking, you know, wrestling storytelling's at its best when kayfabe gets broken in a kayfabe way, and it's at its absolute fucking worst when kayfabe is actually broken. And, you know, this episode of Dynamite was pretty heart-wrenching because, you know, the reality is, you know, it wasn't a TV storyline. Brodie Lee didn't die. John Huber did. You know, the last time we saw Brodie Lee, he had probably his best match, at least that I've ever seen, and that includes, the six-man tags that they had with the Wyatt family versus the Shield. Like, whenever we'd mention him on the podcast, we were sort of like, he just had this brutal, long, cruel, storytelling TNT dog collar title match. And hopefully he comes back and he's more that guy. And, then we're not worried about the sort of cult or anything like that. And I think it's pretty rare, at the very least, for a character to go out after their best match. And,
There's no... I mean, I've written notes for this episode. I mean, they're really... It would just be me going, this was great, this almost made me cry. This was great, this almost made me cry. I mean... As far as what this is, or what it was, like a tribute to a friend and family member who had passed away, I can't really think of a wrestling, or I can't, and this is not the time to have a shot at WWE or anything like that, but I can't remember WWE doing this. They did it for Owen, right?
Yeah.
That's the only other... Is that the only time they've done it?
I haven't watched that episode of Raw, but yeah, I believe they did sort of a special, just wrestling, no storyline match episode.
Yeah. And I'm sure. I'm sure that was, I'm sure that was very heartfelt and great. And I did. We couldn't watch that at the time, so there's no point in us saying anything about it. This wasn't schmaltzy. It wasn't emotional for the sake of it. It wasn't. It felt. Jericho, when he came out to commentate, was like, this is a form of catharsis for us tonight, and it did genuinely feel like that. One thing I picked up on, man, is like how much masculinity has, or maleness, or being male, or whatever you want to call that, being a man, how much that has changed since Owen passed away. There's lots of like crying and dudes hugging each other, and Jericho going, if you want to cry, it's all right to cry. I mean, Jericho's still at 1,000 miles an hour, even in this episode. I mean, he was great in everything that he did, because it's fucking Jericho. But like just that attitude of like, it's all right to be sad, and like that. I just thought that was a really, in what is it's a very male dominated. Even the fandom is very male dominated. So to get that message from heroes, I thought was really cool.
And I think even sort of adding to that was, people like, I think almost everyone who spoke about him, I think Eddie Kingston had one of the most sort of, I don't know what you exactly call it, tribute, I guess, but all of them sort of mentioned that this guy was a great father and husband, and like it wasn't sort of the, the Mad Men style father where you just go out and earn your money and like don't actually give a shit about your kids. Like the fact that the episode was so focused around his children and his wife, showed that was sort of the central point of John Huber as a person.
Yeah, it was. I keep meaning to send a tweet to AEW. Not that they would care if I tweeted them or not, but I mean, it was just done. It was just done really well. It was, for an organization in an industry that is not known for its class and tact. You know what I mean? This was all class and very tactful. I just thought all of it was done really well. I just want to big up MJF for not breaking kayfabe though.
It was
because
terrific.
you just can't have MJF break kayfabe, man.
And I think from this there are, like, as I said before, Eddie Kingston doing that promo was not necessarily out of character. Like he can sort of exist on he's a very three-dimensional fellow.
Yeah, this was still very much an episode of Dynamite, but Yeah, they just did it really well. I mean, there isn't really anything else for me to say besides that. I didn't have any expectations. I was just like, oh well, this will be sad. This will be a sad episode of Dynamite, and it was. But there was still a lot of joy and love, and they were celebrating the person, and that's someone who's come from an Irish Catholic upbringing. That doesn't happen at all, so it's always nice to see how normal people do that. Everyone just gets drunk and pushes their feelings down until it turns into cancer. But that's really good. It was so nice. Americans are very good at that.
They are.
They're very good at being an open book, especially it must have been so difficult for those guys to put that show on. And
I do think that there's probably only two things wrestling wise, there was Eric Rowan or Eric Redbeard showed up, and that I think that was really lovely. I don't think that's necessarily worth. It was sort of strange because I was like, oh, I actually wouldn't mind seeing this enormous Viking do something in AEW, which is something I probably didn't think previously. But I do think there are sort of the standout people who, well, like Anna Jay, I think we've spoken about as a potential standout for a long time, but I think she really shone quite brightly in this sort of tribute episode, and I really hope that they build off that. And as well as, this is obviously for the character 10 of the Dark Order, who, was not a featured character, somehow now sort of has a bit of personality. This showed
100%.
This showed a little bit of who he is as a person, and I'm kind of interested. Like, I don't think there can be as pure a babyface as a mask-wearing cult member, 10 in grieving, who was obviously exceptionally close to Brodie and had been supported by him and close to his family.
No, it was nice that the Dark Order were in every match and won every match, and that was a nice little moment. Thunder Rosa attacking Britt Baker is probably the other tiny bit of kayfabe where it's like, oh, it's on, it's happening.
Well, this may be an example of something existing outside of kayfabe. Maybe Thunder Rosa is literally just attacking Britt Baker. Maybe we've got a real feud here.
Maybe. I saw a photo of her hanging out with her boyfriend Adam Cole on New Year's Eve, and they are a very good-looking couple. Here's that thing, like, their photo of them just hanging out on New Year's Eve looked like a stock photo that would be in, a picture frame of, like, what does a handsome couple look like? Oh, it's these two.
Yeah, they definitely, are good-looking people.
Yeah, it just makes me feel really bad about myself. Anyway, this was, I don't know if there's anything else to say. I do have one negative piece of feedback, but I don't know whether it's right to even bring it up in this episode. I might save it and see if it happens again. But there's just something that's happening behind the commentary desk that needs to stop immediately.
Is this your JR complaint?
No, it's actually Tony. It's actually Tony. JR, I've just given up on. He's not changing. He's not going anywhere. There's no point me even getting angry about it anymore because it's just going to be shit every week. But the it's Sting needs to stop. Like, it's fucking everywhere. Do you even remember? We're watching WCW at the moment.
No, I feel like
he doesn't do it. Tony's not on Nitro yet, but
I don't know. I think I don't know if you would have felt differently if Sting had have appeared next year and we were in the proper Sting appearing out of nowhere. I don't know. Yeah,
it's been 3 weeks. I feel and then, like, on the podcast, he was doing it, and, like, and then bloody Excalibur's getting in there and doing it as well. It's like, it needs to be done at the right time, not all the time,
Well, I mean, Sting needs to do something, but this was not the week for him to do something, so that's okay.
I didn't mind him and Darby Allin
Oh,
no, that's a tiny bit of storyline where it's like, ooh, they're friendos, weirdo friendos.
And I do think, like, I don't know. I've watched the Brodie Lee Cody dog collar match twice this week. Because I think we were all very. It's sort of, you're almost a bit numb when a wrestler dies at 55 who was a, steroidy, someone, in 2005 they died kind of thing. And it's like, wow, that's really shit. And it's really shit that they died. But it's just a little bit different when you're like, hey, that guy was a great wrestler who had incredible capacity and had probably had his best in-ring years and best storytelling years ahead of him. And then, dies sort of seemingly it's quite out of nowhere at 41 years old. And then, you also spend 2 hours being confronted, with the fact that this is a real person, not a character.
Yeah, but I like that wasn't shirked away from.
Yeah.
It would be really easy for them to do the first segment where everyone comes out on stage and they ring the bell 10 times and then go, okay, now it's time to go back to normal, which I always wonder with WWE, like, how do those guys do that? How do they just like, oh, okay, well, now it's time to be the new day, even though, like your friends just died tragically or whatever?
Well, that's the thing with WWE is like, there's the stories of after the Montreal screw job, like Mick Foley didn't want to wrestle. And people were like, oh, we don't want to wrestle because this terrible injustice has happened. And then there's also, 15 wrestlers who died in the, over the space of, 5 years. Because of complications of getting smashed in the head with a chair and doing steroids, and there's a very, very strange mental sort of divergence that goes on.
Yeah, but I mean, just in the sense of like, just ignoring it, even though like everyone in the audience knows that it's happened, everyone on the roster knows that it's happened, like. I thought the Pat Pattinson one was weird, seeing that he was like one of Vince's best mates, and it was just like, oh, well, see you later, Pat, on with the show, and it was like, was that at TLC? I think they did that. Anyway, I just much prefer this, where it's like, hey, look, this fucking happened and everyone here is really upset and we're still going to put a show on for you guys because we can sort of all get through this together, and it's okay if you're sad because that's perfectly natural. That's a perfectly natural response. So are we. There's nothing wrong with that.
It was an acknowledgement that the audience grieve as well, and it was an acknowledgement, particularly this year.
I actually felt better. Yeah,
we've spoken multiple times about how professional wrestling is like the thing that has been like at least thank God that they had, Dynamite during the really hard lockdowns we had where we, basically weren't leaving the house at all. At least there was like one thing a week where it's like, hey, they've got this thing and like we can watch it on TV and it's like guys pretending to drive other guys' heads into things.
I know, it's the best.
Britt Baker's being a real dick to people and it's so good and thank God we have this to shoot the shit and
It's Trent's mum.
Yes, exactly.
Sue's here. I love Sue.
The Young Bucks are suplexing someone across they're suplexing Sammy Guevara across a football field, the full length.
Oh yeah.
There was enough to be like, hey, like things are going to be okay.
Yeah, they did too. I forgot about that. That's great.
Because AEW are like still doing this stupid bullshit that we really, really like.
Yeah, but my hat goes off to AEW and everyone who was involved in this week's Dynamite. It's one of the, I think, no, I don't know how long we'll do this podcast. We might do it for 10 more months. We might do it for 10 more years. Who knows? What I know is that I will remember this episode of Dynamite until I die. Like it's etched into my memory as a memorable episode of Dynamite. And yeah, because it's sad and stuff at times, but it was also a night, like, not only was it a great tribute to Brodie Lee, but it was a great tribute to just wrestling in general and how, John Moxley spoke about how wrestling is a community, and I think he was talking about wrestlers, and that's fair because he is a wrestler, but I think for us as fans, even not more so, but it's the same thing. Like I've been into like different types of music scenes that are I've felt very underground, and wrestling feels like that at the moment. It feels like it's like a secret handshake, right? When you meet someone who's into wrestling, and everybody else at the table looks at you like you're a fucking child, and you're in a state of arrested development, but you and that other person know, yeah, but fuck, man, we have so much fun watching this thing. And I think it was a really nice celebration of that as well. Because they would have been well within their rights of just not doing Dynamite this week, and I don't think anyone would have begrudged them that, but to front up and do it anyway was really brave and really cool, and I'm really thankful that they did that.
Yep, I agree. We'll be back with a more combative, more disagreeable, more cranky, more hopefully occasionally funny, probably not more insightful because that's for maybe other people. But we'll be back next week and
who do we look like? Brian Alvarez? You're not getting insights on this podcast. I mean, Brian's insight every week is the same thing. WWE's not good, but it is an insight.
Which I think we covered this week.
We do cover that a lot as well, actually.
But we'll see. We'll be back with a
we'll be
more
things
pleasant,
will start to get back
more
to normal.
friendly.
Yeah, next week. But so in the meantime, guys, if you want to rate and review, great. If you want to follow us, whatever you want to do, fantastic. Until next time,